Call the meeting to order. I invite you to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Kolpak.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. We came out of the executive session. Is there a motion you'd like to put forth, please?
Mr. Chair, I move to
Commissioner Kolpak.
I move to authorize the city's attorney's office to file an appeal of the district court's February 20, 2024 order and February 28, 2024 judgment in case number 092023 CV 02540.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just real quick, I just want to say, John said it actually, but I'm proud of our group for sticking up for this. It's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, I believe, but it's about local control and for us to determine what's best for our city versus legislators in Bismarck. And the irony is the legislators in Bismarck complain about local control to the federal government. So yet here they are as an example being the exact thing that they don't wish to be. And so I just think this is a great thing for us. I do wish Ian good luck because I think we're facing a little bit of an uphill battle, but I think it was very symbolic that the League of Cities, which is all the cities in Fargo, or including Fargo in the state of North Dakota, are with us. And so I think that says a lot. And so I think we're doing the right thing. And I think we may not be successful. Hopefully we are, but we have an excellent attorney and I think we can do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Here's message. Engineering. The Flexible Transportation Fund was established by the 68th Legislative Assembly to complement the Federal Aid Highway Program and to further support the interconnection transportation system in North Dakota. The engineering department submitted multiple applications for this program and has been awarded the $1.4 million for the reconstruction of NP Avenue between 8th Street and Broadway in 2025. This will also help with the project that's going on in NP Avenue, so it should be a great addition to our community. The Fargo Fire Department, in cooperation with the City of Fargo's Public Works Department, will be conducting hydrant flushing and inspections beginning Tuesday, April 16th. Each year, the city staff members flush over 7,500 hydrants. During this process, it's not unusual for iron oxide to become dislodged. If residents experience water discoloration, they are encouraged to let the water run a few minutes to clear the iron oxide from the system. If residents notice rust deposits in their laundry, they can call 701-241-1469 to receive a packet of detergent to remove the rust from the clothing. And Commissioner Kolpak, where do they go for that? Do you know?
We'll call the number and I think it'll be sent out.
Okay, it'll be sent out to them. Okay, thank you. Library. Area gardeners are invited to learn how to grow plants for the pollinator and wildlife habitats at the Prairie Garden Workshop on Wednesdays, April 17th at 6:30 p.m. in the downtown main library. Free seed packets will be distributed as part of that event. A craft supply swap is scheduled also for Saturday, April 20th from noon to 4 at the main library. Residents who donate craft items in advance will get an early entry ticket for the swap. Details are available again at the library website. And North Dakota poet Denise Landjemmerdeer will be giving a reading and talk of her new children's book, Josie Dances, on Monday, April 29th at 6 p.m. at the main library. An enrolled citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, Landjemmerdeer, will also include a cultural show and tell as part of her presentation. Planning. In January 2024, the City of Fargo invited middle and high school students to submit original artwork with a chance for their design to be featured on the local Mat bus. The students were encouraged to create designs with the theme of environmental stewardship and climate resiliency. This call for art submission was a collaborative effort with the Sustainability and Resilience Committee, Fargo Youth Initiative, and Arts and Culture Commission. The production and installation of the bus wrap will be made possible by using renewable energy revenues generated through the solid waste utility. All 20 submissions of the students' artwork are currently on display in the first floor of City Hall. The highest scoring submission belonged to seventh grader Kylie Trana, and she is the one who won the competition. So we'll have a short video to show Kaylee and her inspirations beside her winning award.
The actual idea didn't take way too long. I was just kind of thinking about it with my mom, and eventually I just settled on it.
So we had like 5 questions of like the criteria. So like, is it clear? Like, is it a good piece of artwork? Is it spreading that message? Just making sure that it's like, if there's a slogan that it like fits. So we kind of used all of those and like saw which one was gonna fit best on the bus. So then we picked our top 3, and obviously the winner will be on the bus, but the rest will be showcased here at City Hall.
So of course, since it's the map bus, you have to add something eco-friendly, and you want to make sure people are drawn to using more bikes, using the bus, picking up litter, using recycling, and it's Red River Valley, so we are known for red pandas, and we wanted to add that in there because red pandas are known for Fargo.
One side of the bus is going to be like the city side, and the other side is the nature side. So like there's like a little panda buying a bus ticket, and so I think it's just cool to show like our community, but through something else, and showing both sides, and that like sustainability part, it hit all the targets. So I think especially on the topic of sustainability, like the youth are the future, and like all the problems with global warming and stuff like that, that's where it's going to affect us, the youth. And so having them involved at this young age so that they know that their voices are being heard and they can make a change is really important.
Thank you so much.
Well, I know 2 commissioners were working on this, so that turned out very well, don't you think?
Yep.
Commissioner Strand and Commissioner Kolpak. Do I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the April 1st, 2024 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 35?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Hi. Resident comment period. We had a virtual, but he's not on, so we will start with Patrick Kelly.
What's up, gang? I'm here to talk about free speech and music in the downtown area, and I guess just what the city's doing about it and what's been done about it. I'm all for local control, but I think the Constitution is the law of the land, and I think you all took an oath to that Constitution. Not exactly sure who wrote this motion from the city, if it was the city attorney or the prosecutor, if they're all part of the same gang. But you guys said to go through the courts. That's what I did. I've been fined $1,340 for free speech on the city streets of Fargo, just playing a guitar on the street. Couple years it took to get any of you to answer, or the attorneys, to just disclose what the significant government interest that you had for stopping free speech after 10 o'clock. And mind you, before I read some of this, the sun doesn't go down at 10 o'clock. It goes down at a different time every day. So this is pretty compelling stuff here. It says that it serves the city's compelling and strong interests. Let me read a little bit here. The noise caused by the defendant is one that is much more likely to travel further and successfully towards the sleeping residents in downtown Fargo. The sound equipment I use is the same as the sound equipment that everybody else in the downtown uses. I don't have special speakers. They're the same speakers everyone uses. Interest for the city of Fargo is one to ensure that there are not too large of crowds. I go play music downtown because that's where the crowds are. It's a historic bar district. On the weekends, that's where the crowds are. It specifically says a person walking home in the late hours of the evening will not be able to travel to their car or home if a sidewalk performer blocked the flow of pedestrians. The crowds would cause further delay, impaired decision-making would lead to unfortunate results such as heckling performers, drunken brawls, unwanted harassment of the general public, possibly even traffic accidents due to crowds spilling into the streets. It is the compelling interest of the city to ensure that crowds drawn by the street performers do not spill into the streets, endangering both pedestrians and motor vehicles. I just want to say one more thing really quick. I don't know who made the decision, but the city of Fargo provides
Paul Stelcup.
expense police officers
Paul Stelcup.
1 a.m. to 3 a.m.
Paul Stelcup.
at taxpayer expense.
Paul Stelcup. Patrick, you're done. You're done. It's 2.5 minutes. Paul Stelcup.
Good evening. My name is Paul Stalkup. I'm proud to say I was born and raised in Fargo. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. First off, thank you to all department heads and coworkers for all you do for Fargo. You are appreciated. To all commissioners and mayor, thank you for what you do for the city of Fargo. Whatever differences we have, there is something all of us have in common. We care about our city and the people who live here. I did not vote for all of you and do not agree with all your views, but I absolutely support the chair you sit in and support and respect the person sitting in it. I am fortunate to be a longtime friend of former Commissioner Mike Williams. I knew I would vote for Mike because I knew him to be honest. I knew he would do his homework, and I knew he would lend an ear to those who had different views. Mike welcomed those conversations. When I asked Willie who he hoped would win and become a fellow commissioner, his response was, "I can work with anybody." That to me are the qualities I look for to become an ideal commissioner. I don't know how many people realize the many committees you serve on, how many meetings you attend, the fact you have jobs outside of your roles as city commissioners. I've watched meetings go 2 hours plus, and yet you're still engaged. Commissioner Pepcorn, on your recommendation, it's my goal to experience a ride-along with the Fargo Police. Commissioner Strand, on your recommendation, I plan on taking a tour of the Downtown Engagement Center. To Commissioner Pepcorn and Preston, to Mayor Mahoney, and to Commissioners Kolpak and Strand, do the best you can for as long as you can. Nobody can ask for more than that. Be well.
KJ Atkinson.
Before I get into it, I'd like to express a quick thank you to Strand and Preston for your conscience and for choosing to do what is right in the face of a genocide, to do something so simple as voting yes in favor of a ceasefire. All others should feel ashamed and riddled with guilt. The cowardice it takes to spew lackluster and pitiful excuses to justify voting no on a ceasefire resolution or to not even show up at all is disgraceful. The complicity in genocide this commission has exhibited is disgusting. One of the many excuses you so often tout about is that Fargo City Commission doesn't speak on foreign politics, but that didn't stop you when it came to Ukraine. No, quite the opposite. This commission was quick and clear with where it stood, not only condemning Russia, but also in unanimously passing a resolution requiring the city's divestment, just 1 month after Russia had begun its invasion. So then why now, 6 bloody, gruesome months into a genocide, are you voting down a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza? Where is that same urgency? Where is that value of life you claim to have? Oh, but wait, you tell us, that was a local issue. Our finances and businesses were involved. We have residents with loved ones in Ukraine. Do you hear the hypocrisy yet? We have stood before you using those same points and more to portray to you why this is a local issue, yet you still refuse to see it as such. You refuse to see we are flushing tons of our money down the drain straight into Israel's genocidal lap. You refuse to see the companies here that are helping build materials for these death machines. You refuse to see the residents here that have so many loved ones in Palestine. You refuse to see that your job as our elected officials is to represent us, your constituents. I would ask you to make it make sense, but you can't. You can't make something that is founded upon lies and hypocrisy make sense, like the sorry excuses we hear come from your mouths. Another argument you so love is, why should the city? Well, first, why not? What do you wage to lose in saying genocide is wrong, civilians shouldn't be bombed, and we need a lasting ceasefire? Second, beyond the many other points I and others have made to you in the past, I'd like you to take a moment to imagine that things were reversed. If your children and grandchildren, partners and loved ones were being starved, bombed, gassed, sniped, left with no shelter through an entire winter, would you not wish somebody, anybody, would speak up and say enough is enough, that those whose voices still can be heard would say to stop the madness? I know I would, and I know they wish it too. Through their live streaming of their own genocide, they have been begging for the people of the world to call for a ceasefire. I know you think this is a dead issue, but it's not. This is not the last you'll see of us. Thank you.
Ellen Fedzik.
So I would like to start off by thanking Strand and Preston for their consistency while on the commission. And personally, as a citizen of Fargo, that is my biggest issue with elected representatives. And if they're not consistent, I'd like to know the actual reasons why. And this has a lot to do with the last meeting. As mentioned right before me, the board has voted unanimously to condemn Russia. That was actually March 21st. And then on February 27th, City Hall was lit up in support of Ukraine. And then in October 11th of last year, it was lit up in support of Israel. Those are all non-local issues, according to Mayor Mahoney, which is what the scope of you guys, of the commission is. So how are those things different than a simple ceasefire resolution? One that doesn't even pick sides in the conflict, just is asking for peace. The Ukraine one clearly picked a side. You guys took a stand on international issues. The ceasefire is just asking for peace, not condemning one side or the other, just wanting peace. But you guys voted against it, so why? Clearly, that behavior is painting you guys as hypocrites, because your beliefs do not line up with your actions. So why is that? Is it because Eastern European lives matter more than Middle Eastern lives? If so, that makes you racist. Or do you guys have a better reason for not, being consistent? Again, Strand and Preston, thank you for being consistent. So it's more so towards the other three members. Thank you.
Perry Johnson.
Commissioners, it's obvious that we would be disappointed in your voting down the ceasefire resolution. It's despicable to choose violence. You frame us as intimidating for using the democratic process and choosing our constitutional rights to bring our grievances to you when I was actually physically assaulted. A grown man punched me straight in the face. He is being charged. Being uncomfortable is not the same as being unsafe. You choose to put us in danger when you say that we are intimidating. What's actually scary is that people, including those of you who didn't show up or voted no, are in support of violence, our government's funding of violence, and to hinder our constitutional rights for your convenience. When I say government funding, you know that it's our tax dollars, our labor used to starve Palestinian children. It's disappointing that you choose to not further educate yourselves on the issues that the community you represent has brought to you. We have cited our resources. You have had months to learn. You frame it as an inability, but that has been your choice. What other problems do people talk about that you don't care to listen or learn about? If you admit that you are unwilling to learn, how are we supposed to trust you? Starvation as a tactic of war is illegal. It is also immoral. Why should I believe that you care about our kids when you blatantly don't care about Palestinian children, some of whose family have spoken with you publicly and privately? There are 11,331 public school children in Fargo. 15,000 children have been murdered with U.S. bombs in Gaza alone. More children than we have here. How can you say that you care about the new Americans? You don't if you don't care about their lived experience, their health, and their happiness, if you only care about extracting their labor. Even if you don't care about human suffering and crimes against humanity, collective punishment, and the severe emotional grief and despair of your own community, you should all be at least fiscally responsible with our money and help to suggest that American taxes are used to benefit Americans. You are disappointing your ancestors, and you will be disappointing ancestors yourselves when you choose to stand against peace. Your legacy is more than your office. It is your morality, it is your use of power and your privilege. Free Palestine.
Juliana Solomon.
Hello, my name is Juliana, and I'm a 14-year-old high school student here in Fargo. Life is precious. This is an undeniable truth. However, it is especially crucial during childhood and youth. These formative years are meant for growth, learning, and making lifelong memories. Childhood should be filled with joy and curiosity. It's where the foundation for the future is built and identities are shaped. We should protect children, safeguard their innocence, and nurture their dreams. The loss of a young life is a tragedy beyond measure. It erases not only their present, but also their future potential, their aspirations, and their impact on the world. Behind every statistic lies a human being, a son, a daughter, a parent, a friend. Their lives are not numbers. They are invaluable souls with dreams and loved ones. Imagine the horror of a bomb detonating in one of our schools, ending the lives of innocent children and leaving devastation in its wake. As of March 18th, as the previous speaker said, more than 13,000 kids have been murdered in Gaza. That is greater than all of Fargo's student population of about 11,300 students. Imagine every student in Fargo dead. Those in Gaza don't have to imagine this. They are living and dying in it. This is the harsh reality faced by the people of Gaza, where thousands of children have perished in senseless violence. Are we really using our tax dollars to fund such atrocities, perpetuating a cycle of violence and oppression? You cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering of others, nor can you justify it with political ideologies. Bombing innocent people is unequivocally and very obviously wrong. There is no justification for the loss of innocent lives, no excuse for the destruction wrought by war. We must demand accountability and urge for a ceasefire. Palestinians are not statistics or political pawns. They are human beings deserving of dignity, freedom, and justice. It's so easy to sign a paper. What reason would there ever be not to say stop bombing people and push for a ceasefire? Let me tell you, it would be a lame and inadequate reason. Do you not feel any moral obligation, at least to the people you represent, to simply sign a ceasefire and cease the senseless murdering of countless innocent people? As residents of the world, we have basic moral obligation to speak out against injustice and support those who are suffering, especially when it is in part our government's own doing. We must push for a world where everyone, regardless of ethnicity or nationality, can live in safety and prosperity and dignity. I implore you to heed the simple request for compassion, action, and basic humanity. Sign for a ceasefire to build a future where every child can thrive and every life is valued. Thank you.
Azure Lorenzen.
Hello, Commissioners. As you may expect, I'm deeply disappointed with the ceasefire vote last meeting. You were elected as a representative of the people, yet when we show up and beg for you to amplify our voices, you sit in opposition. Pipecorn, I did notice that you were absent from the meeting. You did not have the decency to appear before your constituents, and when you were present in body, you were absent in mind. You were a blight on the city. Mayor Tim, when Russia invaded Ukraine, you did not mince your words. You showed unconditional support for the Ukrainian people fighting against Russian aggression and directed the city to divest from Russia. Yet when we call for a ceasefire in Gaza, you stand in opposition. Denise, when I met with you, you told me that you were concerned that the opposition would feel intimidated by our mere presence. But when I shared a story of the violence my Palestinian friends faced while protesting in this city, you did not shed a single tear. When I met with you, you told me that you were concerned that this will create division. 2 weeks ago, I looked around at the meeting, and I struggled to find any of the elusive opposition. What I did see was a room filled with people begging and pleading for you to do the right thing and call for a ceasefire. I ask you not to hide behind the non-existent opposition. Stop the cowardly act of hiding and speak up as yourself. You stand against peace. You stand against justice. You stand against your constituents. You are divisive. Thank you. That is my time.
Wes Philomé.
Wes Philomé, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying long live George Floyd and Anue Matchik. Recently, there were 3 high-profile complaints lodged against the Fargo Police Department that made the front pages of the Forum. 2 of those investigations have been completed. 1 is still outstanding. Last week, the Fargo Police Department went to the Oversight Board and they presented their conclusion to 2 of those investigations. We have come to find out that at least one of the complainants were not made aware that the investigation had been concluded, had not been provided the opportunity to view the footage. They only found out after it was presented at the Oversight Board that the officers were exonerated. During the presentation, the officer who presented stated he acknowledged in Abinical's case that the officer who handled it had only been on the force for 2 years, and had it been an officer who had been on the force for 5 or 6 years or 10 years, that the outcome would have been different. And so that made it really hard to accept that he was still exonerated. In the video, Abinical is in the back of the police car and he's begging and pleading for documentation. That's all he's asking for, is that he wants some paperwork. And they tell him that there is no paperwork before they physically rip him out of the vehicle and leave him in the middle of the dead of winter on a cold, blistery, snowy, non-sunny day. And they said it was over a quarter mile from where they had taken him, and he was not dressed for the day, and he had to walk. No cell phone, no anything. And I'm also taking issues with the fact that our oversight board does not have unfeathered access to the stuff that they're supposed to make decisions on. They only get to see a view from the Fargo Police Department. They only get to see a presentation. They only get to see a cut up of clips. How does that work?
15 seconds.
Okay, they only get to see what Fargo PD wants them to see, and I don't think that's right. It doesn't allow them to make the informed decisions. Thank you.
Allison Slavic.
All right. I want to start by expressing my deep gratitude to Commissioners Strand and Preston for their support of a ceasefire in the Middle East. To say I'm disappointed in the rest of you is an understatement. To paint this issue as divisive is ignorant and disrespectful. I was a little confused why the ceasefire resolution was never read out loud at the meeting when you voted on it. Is that because you didn't want the general public to hear it? Is it because it would make you look bad to vote down a resolution that sounds so peaceful? Well, I'd like to take a moment to read it so anyone tuning into this meeting can actually hear it. All peoples have the right to self-determination, recognizing the legitimate desire and need for Palestinian self-determination, as well as the legitimate desire and need for Israelis and Palestinians to live in safety and security. Condemnation towards all acts of violence committed against civilians of any kind. The city of Fargo expresses sympathy for the civilian victims and all those affected by the horrific violence. Fargo's status as a welcoming community for those of Jewish and Islamic faiths and any other religions, standing firmly against the rise of and all acts of racially motivated violence and hate crimes perpetuated against our Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian, and Arab constituents here in Fargo and the United States. And Fargo City Commission supports our state and federal delegations in the Biden administration using their authority to advance a full, immediate, and permanent ceasefire, along with urgently needed humanitarian aid as a necessary step towards lasting peace. Support withholding U.S. military funding to the state of Israel until Israel fully complies with international law to prevent contributing to the humanitarian catastrophe, loss of life, war crimes, and illegal occupation. Ensure the release of civilians being held illegally or imprisoned on both sides of the crisis, including the approximately 130 Israeli hostages taken by Hamas and the thousands of Palestinians held indefinitely without cause and or trial in Israeli prisons. Can you please point out which part of this resolution is divisive? Not only did you vote down or not show up for a call to peace, but now you're claiming this city hall needs more security measures. Funny how that didn't seem to be a concern until my friends with more melanin started showing up. How do you draw such threatened conclusions, Pepcorn? When you won't reply to a single one of our emails and you're too busy playing Candy Crush and checking your emails while we pour out our hearts to you at every city commission meeting. This is not a good look for you, Fargo. Do better.
Moving to the regular agenda, 37, a presentation of Michelle Ritz from the High Plains Fair Housing Center to discuss demographic trends of Fargo neighborhoods. Commissioner Strand to explain.
Thank you, Mayor. Several months ago, Michelle presented to the Human Rights Commission some information that, in my opinion, and this isn't calling for any actions, it's just insight into our demographics in our neighborhoods. And I had not seen this type of detail drilling down information before, and remember thinking this would be really valuable for us when we have a moment at the City Commission to hear this presentation, to hear this look into who we are at the most granular level. So Michelle, on that note, and I think you have a whole month of housing. About 180 of us were at the Fargo Theater the other night. You had a panel discussion and a video and a film on evictions. So you're focusing on housing, and this is one aspect of that, but I really do appreciate your bringing the messaging and data, Michelle, you had brought to the Human Rights Commission, to the full City Commission.
Thank you. Yes, April is Fair Housing Month, so we're doing our best to get the word out about fair housing. So High Plains Fair Housing Center is a volunteer organization founded about 10 years ago. Our three main focuses are education outreach. What are your rights under the Federal Fair Housing Act? What are your responsibilities under the Federal Fair Housing Act? We also do advocacy. So if you feel like you're a victim of housing discrimination, we can help you. We can help you with your case. If we can't mediate with your landlord, we can certainly work with you through the court system or through the administrative complaint system. And then we do systemic investigations. That's our secret shopper program, which determines whether or not discrimination is happening in our city or in our state. And that's secret shopping is like it says, somebody from a protected class and not from a protected class, and simulates a rental or sales experience. And then we compare treatment and determine if discrimination is occurring. In North Dakota, under the Fair Housing Act and the North Dakota Housing Discrimination Act, it's illegal to discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, familial status, a home with a child under the age of 18, and disability, someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits their major life activities. Is there a thing here I can switch? Okay. In the last 8 years, we've taken over 1,400 fair housing calls since, and the majority of those calls are discrimination based on disability. In Fargo, in 2023, we had 275 housing calls. Of them, 143 were related to housing discrimination. That's up 100% since 2022. So what that means is not that more discrimination is happening. It means more people know what their rights are and and they're doing something about it. We resolved 47 issues through mediation. We do a lot of outreach. We conducted 22 fair housing events here in Fargo, 70 statewide, and we conducted 48 fair housing tests in Fargo based on national origin, race, disability, and familial status. And then this is just a case in the news. This case began in spring of 2021 when a family of 6 was non-renewed when they updated their lease to announce the birth of a child. The management cited an occupancy limit of 1.5 people allowed per bedroom in the 3-bedroom townhome. The family had never been laid on rent or incurred a lease violation in the 4 years of their tenancy at the property. All of the children in the household were under the age of 10 and were not in violation of the city code occupancies for the 3-bedroom home. After mediation and advocacy failed, High Plains Fair Housing worked with them through the HUD administrative process, and the client prevailed with a $100,000 settlement that should have never gone to court, in my opinion. The Fair Housing Act is the only civil rights act that has 2 purposes. The first is to eliminate housing discrimination, and the second is to promote residential integration. This second piece acknowledges the role that the federal government played in relegating people of color into underfunded, poor, and racially isolated communities. In order to promote residential integration, the federal government created the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Rule, which basically compels any city, state, or locality that receives federal funding, like Fargo, to administer their housing and community development programs in a way that affirmatively further fair housing, or they will jeopardize their federal funding. So they have to address any inequity among protected class groups, promote integration, and reduce segregation, and transform racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity. So now the data, and it's not too long. This is nothing new. This data is just data that comes from the census and from the, the Fargo-Moorhead housing analysis. So we know Fargo is growing fast. North Dakota was the 4th fastest growing state. The state increased its population by 16% between 2010 and 2020, and Cass County alone grew by 23%. And this is the first time in history that 17% of the state identified as a race other than white. Fargo, Bismarck, of course, and the oil countries are the areas that are driving this growth. So this is the predominant racial group between 2012 and 2016. These small color-coded block groups, each holds anywhere between 600 and 3,000 residents of the city. Here, the dark purple areas grew in population. Yes, okay, so, sorry. So what I was going to say here is the key is the purple are the white area, are predominantly white. The darker areas is over 90% white. The lighter is more diverse, but still still predominantly all the census blocks in Fargo were predominantly white. And that was between 2012 and 2016. And so between 2017, we can see emerging patterns of minority census tracts. And that's the very first time that has happened in Fargo. So the green areas are areas that are Black Americans in census tracts that are majority minority. So what does that mean for shifting schools? The stars, so research has shown that some real estate agents and leasing agents will begin to steer buyers and renters away from some neighborhoods as soon as the percentage of students of color at the neighborhood school rises beyond anywhere from 2 to 15%. This map shows the percentage of people of color living in the neighborhood, with the darkest red areas being neighborhoods that are more than 25% people of color. Each of these stars is a school that is approaching or already is a majority minority school. A majority minority school is a school where the percentage of students of color of all races aggregated together is higher than the percentage of white students. Given that the discriminatory real estate agents will begin to steer families away from schools far beyond they ever approach majority minority status, how can these changes potentially affect housing choice in Fargo? And this is another map, just picking out one of those schools and showing the trend, the demographic trend. The pink line is the white population, student population, and then the other colors are the aggregated colors of other races. So emerging concerns. These maps show emerging segregation patterns that are occurring since 2007, and these segregation patterns are reflected in our school districts around the city, and we're very concerned about the housing choices and are being limited based on these emerging patterns of segregation. So the Fargo-Moorhead Regional Housing Analysis projected the need for nearly 15,000 more housing units in the next 10 years. And one way to determine if Fargo is creating barriers to housing choice is to analyze zoning and what kind of permits are being requested, and making sure to promote affordable housing development in areas of high opportunity to address both disproportionate housing needs based on race and color, and ensuring that developments are not built in census tracts that are majority minority or are trending that way. So the next steps. At a minimum, Fargo must ensure that developers and property managers know about the majority minority census tracts and are addressing these increasing segregation patterns in our neighborhoods and our schools, are educated in fair housing law, and can effectively demonstrate how they will affirmatively further fair housing in our communities, not just for the health of our communities, but also to preserve federal funding. Other ideas address the segregation of opportunity and related inequitable distribution of resources in our parks, in our infrastructure, in our schools. Fair housing training, I think, is essential for Planning and Zoning Commission. They're all volunteer. It's a volunteer board. It's wonderful that they're a part of our community, but they need to be trained on fair housing. I believe there should be mandatory fair housing training for all housing professionals. Real estate agents already get that. Lenders need it. Property managers need it as well. And of course, yes, property managers. And then penalties for slum landlords. If you look at where the slum or the areas are, where the buildings are in disrepair, many tend to be in majority minority census tracts. And then finally, I believe that some of this could be ameliorated with more diversity in our housing provider professionals. There's very few real estate agents, lenders, bankers that are persons of color. That's it. That's all I got.
Mr. Strand?
Michelle, thank you very much for sharing this information with us. I know when I see this, I need to dig deeper and learn more what that all means to us, but you're highlighting the overview to us and giving us that broader perspective is really, really important, so thank you. And thanks for the work you're doing.
Could you kindly send your PowerPoint to Kimber Henderson so it could be distributed to commissioners, please?
Sure, and I actually have more data maps that I can send you as well, but I knew I was limited by time, and I needed to provide
Thank you for
the
your brevity.
context.
We appreciate
Sure.
that. Commissioner Preston?
I have a couple questions. One for you, Michelle. You talk about penalties for slum landlords. Can you give us some examples there?
Yeah, I was just kind of sitting in my office brainstorming what else could happen. So I don't have any specific examples. I didn't do any research on that, but okay. I feel like I drive around the city a lot. I know a lot of the areas and the apartments, and I just happened to go to one to drop off some materials, and I mean, there was cars that were burnt out, there were garage doors that were broken. I just couldn't believe that it was in our city. So
Okay.
I feel like there should be some consequences. Maybe that's a building
Yeah.
department.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're struggling a little bit with that in regards to the rental, single families being converted to rentals.
Right.
The other question I have is for Michael. Would you mind coming to the microphone, Michael? So certainly as we are looking at the LDC revisions, certainly we're talking about looking at opening up the zoning and getting away from the restrictions that we currently have, which I think would go a certain ways with this. But I'm wondering, and we've also talked about a housing specialist, which seems to me would be really wise to get a handle on this. One of the things in the housing study we discovered is that mortgages are turned down more frequently for people of color than others, with everything else considered, income level, history, credit history, everything else. So, you know, I think what we're seeing here are some issues that are, they're getting concerning. And wondering if the DEI office has done any kind of analysis, any work on this issue.
Mayor and commissioners, Commissioner Preston, I wouldn't be able to answer that question off the top of my head, but I'm happy to get an answer to that question and bring it back to the commission for your information.
That would be great.
You're welcome.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Item 38, we have the Board of City Commissioners governance policies. You want to thank you for an opportunity to present the proposed City of Fargo governance policies. I want to specifically thank commissioners for your time and input on April 4th. We had a great session, and I thought it was helpful to gather final time to look at what we accomplished over the past several months with the group. I also want to thank Dr. Jeff Schatz for his excellent facilitation services. He was great to work with. I think we all agree we arrived at a thoughtful consensus on the items we discussed in our 8 working sessions. I will summarize the final version of the governance policy. Let's start to walk through the document. And you've been provided both a clean and a redlined version of the document, so please follow along with either version that you will like. Policy 1. This policy was clarified to include the mayor coordinates the performance review of the city administrator. Policy 2. This is a large policy with several elements. The actual language from city ordinance has been included on page 6 in a redlined version. The financial planning and administrative section has been strengthened and clarifies how the city administrator is to manage fund balance and reserves. On page 13 in the redline version, you'll see reference to the city's new purchasing policy, as well as expectations for communicating the financial condition of the city. Policy 3, we had no change. Policy 4. Here you'll recall we added a role clarity for agenda management, including how citizens are to work through commissioners for agenda items. Further, on page 19 of the redline version, you'll see our new conflict of interest process. Next, in Policy 5, you will see our agreed upon updates to resident comment portions of the City Commission meeting. You will find, as we've all discussed, a better way for communicating with the public is 3 separate comment opportunities described, including resident comment for agenda items. These will now be matched with the agenda item that is going to be discussed, as we discussed. So rather than having a comment meeting at the beginning of the meeting, we would have, if you have any comment on an agenda item, you would be able to speak once the agenda item is presented to the commission and the public or the staff has presented it, then we would welcome the public comment at that time. Also, you'd have to call in for that just like we do comments right now. There's a resident comment period at public hearings, and the public hearings follow the agenda item that is public hearing. And those are items that typically are zoning changes or other items that we have that have been in our agendas before and been easily managed. The general resident comment will be at the end of the commission meeting for those items not on the agenda. So that allows residents, if they want to comment on something, they will be allowed at the end of the meeting to discuss those comments, and will again be allowed a half hour to go through the comments that they may want to comment on anything. We directed a great deal of time on this policy, and I think we have arrived at a great place. We have not looked at the policy of the city of Fargo for many years. It hasn't been looked at for 30, 40 years at this point. And this is an attempt to match up our ordinances with our policy, and I think we've arrived at a great place. I thank you all as commissioners for your discussion and thorough, thoughtful input on this policy. I have also reserved space here on Policy 5 for future language regarding safety and security of city commission meetings. This is an important topic, and I have heard from you, commissioners, and we will be devoting time on this topic this spring and summer. As I look at Policy 5, I believe this will result in a better experience for those residents providing for comment at our meetings, as well as commissioners and city staff. Policy 6 has been updated for consistency back to Policy 4. Policy 7 is no change. Our next steps are this. Tonight, I'm asking the Commission to authorize the city attorney and me to prepare the proposed governance policy for adoption by resolution on Monday, April 29th, 2024. After approval on April 29th, the Commission and city staff will work together to implement the governance policies. There's a lot of detail here, and we need to provide time to get these policies in action. Again, thank you for the great discussions we've had on this. And could I get a motion to approve, please?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Preston.
So I really appreciate all of the work that was done, and we had a lot of good discussion at our last retreat. One of my concerns was the original draft had some executive limitations on the financial planning side, and actually, out of the 4 items, 3 of them have been incorporated in different ways, which is really nice to see. The only one that wasn't, and I have a motion, I believe, if somebody could bring that up. The only one that wasn't was relating to transferring funds or line items from one fund to another. And so I would just suggest that in light of the language, which the other 3 items were incorporated, that we might consider this particular motion. So I would move, and I'll read it because this is something that all of you haven't seen, and that's why it's displayed on the screen as well. I would move to add the following to a policy number 2A, which is the operational expectation. Policy 5, financial planning and administration, under the financial administration section. Number 10, budget line items are not transferred from one fund to another unless reviewed by the Finance Committee and authorized by the Board of City Commissioners.
And the only thing I'd speak to that is if you go to item either on your...
Get a second before?
I'm sorry, is there a second?
Second.
On item 2A, which you don't have up here, basically it says, the financial administration, the city administrator is first to delegate authority to financial director or designate to ensure the following. And 2A goes, not cause or rely any financial activity or condition that deviates from the budget the Board of City Commissioners adopted. The area that we changed after our last meeting per your request, this includes expending more funds than have been received in the fiscal year unless revenues have been made available by other legal means, including the use of fund balances or authorization to transfer funds from reserve or other funds. That last sentence was added per your request, and I think that addresses exactly what you're trying to add in here.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Preston.
Yeah, this really was one of the items of the 4 executive limitations. The only thing that is not included in this particular statement, and maybe the amendment could be much more simple, which is authorization to transfer funds from reserve or other funds. This one actually talks about the budget line item not being transferred except with authorization, and it spells out the authorization, the Finance Committee and the City Commission.
And even with the policy we have, it still goes to the financial director and still comes to the commission. So I would say that what we presently have covers what you're trying to cover. I'm not sure it adds anything to more than what we already have, but I'll leave it to the commissioners to vote on this particular issue. Any discussion?
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Kolpak.
Yes, so I get clarification either from Michael or city attorney on, I thought there was a concern here about this being counter to current existing policy that exists today. I just want clarification on that, if that makes sense, Mr. Redlinger.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Commissioner Kolpak, I believe in our discussion on April 4, and to the mayor's point, what we were attempting to do under item number 2 there was just clarify and amplify that the authorities that do exist are such that they are derived from the Finance Committee, they're derived from the Commission. And so to that discussion that you just had, if you wanted to add another piece of language, something along the line of what is on your screen, it really would be under that number 2. I think that everything that we pulled together for comments after your last session with Dr. Schatz is now consistent with ordinance, consistent with charter, and really it's to the commission's discretion as to how you would like to handle this last matter.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Preston, for giving us a little more homework. I'm looking forward to diving into this and learning where the differences and the nuances of this, and I think that gives us something to focus on between now and April 29th. A question I have is, we have Finance Committee, and then we have the FMOA, the other quarterly committee of us and the Finance Committee. Which does this policy trigger? Does it trigger the Finance Committee, that's the staff committee, or does it trigger the quarterly committee with the Finance Committee where we meet with them? I'm a little confused on that.
Quarterly meeting, John. If
So
you go
that
off
might be-
budget, the 5 commissioners weigh in on it.
So that might be clarified as well as we're looking at this policy going forward. I'm not clear on that. I would say it's the Finance Committee, the way I read it, not the quarterly group.
It's a quarterly meeting.
So that, if we
I
could
think
also.
I think it's in policy. I'd have to go through it. Mike, do you know quickly where that is? I think we have something that goes to that.
Thank you. Commissioner Strand, to your question, the Finance Committee is the City Commission moving forward. So the quarterly authority is derived from the City Commission. What the Staff Committee is not a committee at all. It's actually just a staff meeting. So we have no delegated authority as staff to talk about the comings and goings of the departments and their requests. So this is really reserved for the commission only.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, Commissioner Pepcorn?
So, Mr. Chair, this is just my comment. So since abolishing the Finance Committee the way it had been for over 20 years, now we have nothing. And so whatever is set up now is extremely inadequate for a budget our size. Basically, we're supposed to have these quarterly meetings. That's not even close to being sufficient. So that's my opinion. Whatever's going on now, we have no idea. As opposed to we had monthly meetings where we went through all this. Now there's nothing. So to me, that's not a good sign. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Actually, we have a quarterly meeting coming up, I think in April, that Thompson has set up, and we'll continue to do quarterly meetings. It allows all 5 commissioners to weigh in on any budget changes, any fund transfers, anything in the budget. It's actually more clarity and transparency than we've ever had, because all commissioners should be aware of any budget changes or anything we do. And the staff one should meet and handle smaller items that are not the level it reaches the commission. So the ability for our commissioners to weigh in, then everybody's aware of the budget, everybody's aware of any fund transfers or how we fund anything. We all get to weigh in and we all get to vote. So it actually gives more power to the commissioners. Commissioner Pep.
So, Mr. Chair, so a quarterly meeting, that is our financial oversight right now.
No, you do the quarterly budget. I mean, you do the yearly budget, which you all are a part of. You have the yearly
I was
budget.
talking.
Let me finish.
No, I was talking. You interrupted me. I'm just saying, so now we have a city running and we have quarterly meetings. Imagine your own business or your own self every 3 or 4 months looking at your budget. And this is a multi-million-dollar budget. And so we have no oversight and we have quarterly meetings, and that's sufficient? Not even close. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now you may speak.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Excuse
could,
me, Commissioner Preston, I was allowed to speak now, so I do want to respond to Commissioner Pepcorn's comments. The commission sets the budget every year. In the budget, you set the goals of the budget, whether it's adding personnel, doing capital investments, whether it's putting money into salaries, whether it's going to be where we head the next year. The quarterly meetings are check-ins to say where are we to our budget and how are we changing things and what are we going to do? Revenues down, expenses up. We had more snow plowing. We had less snow plowing. It allows all the commissioners to be updated on a quarterly basis. In the past, basically what happens, we did the budget. All of the commissioners would weigh into the budget. A year later, we would report on the budget and say how well we fared. Every commissioner was allowed to go to the auditor, so you talk to the auditor and say that. We have been within 1% to 2% of the budget all the time I've been in the commission. We have always been within 1% to 2% of the budget. Quarterly meetings of the whole commission is an opportunity for all commissioners to know where we sit, for all commissioners to comment on it, and for us to vote up and down any fund changes. Commissioner Strand, you're well aware where transit is. Transit is we have to help out. We have to look at that on a yearly basis or quarterly basis to see where we're at. In the employees, the ability for us to get employees and keep them is that it's a very competitive market and we have to be able to react quickly. This actually gives the commission 4 opportunities to intervene on the budget that we never had before. So this truly is a change from what we've had. Commissioner Preston.
Could I suggest that we get back to the content of the amendment? And I appreciate this clarification about the Finance Committee, but that truly is extraneous to the amendment, it seems to me. So if we could just get back to that, I'd appreciate it.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Kopak.
Commissioner Preston, could you clarify now where we are on the amendment that you're proposing after this discussion?
This is the amendment.
Okay.
Is the amendment only to add item 10 or is it amendment? I believe that's really what it is, only to add item 10?
Yes.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Kolpak,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now we go to the resolution to adopt the policy. For resolution, we're supposed to instruct the attorney to prepare for next meeting. Did I have a motion on that?
Yes. you
I
did.
did motion in a second, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Mr. Strand.
Mayor, the public really saw us roll up our sleeves and tackle this topic in a way that was really rough around the edges at times. And that's governance. It's like making sausage. Sometimes we have to put various ingredients together and bring us all forward and together and see what end product we can come up with together. I want to commend my peers and colleagues at the table for us all getting there with this very significant policy evolution across the boards. And specifically to the general public, I want to thank us for I don't know of another government entity ever anywhere that I know of that allows public comment to be connected to the topics as they're surfacing on your business agenda. I think that's really a terrific experiment. And I think we can learn from that. And we can always change it if it doesn't work. But that's a step beyond what anybody necessarily was asking for, was to take the feedback from the community and the residents and hone in on the topics we're discussing. And then on top of that, to allow open public comments at the end for items that the community wants to share with us that are not agenda specific. We really landed somewhere for the people. And this is listening and learning from and serving the people. It might be cumbersome, it might be awkward and problematic at times, and we can always evolve it. But thank you all for going forward and for sticking to our guns and for coming up with something that I'm guessing other government subdivisions will emulate. We've already seen others emulate our approaches to public comment, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this ripple out further. So kudos to the colleagues at the board here and staff and everybody who helped us get there.
Mr. Kolpak.
Yeah, a couple of things I just would like to kind of reiterate from the work that we did. First of all, if you go back and look at the packet from when we first started talking about what was being proposed in the governance policies, The general resident comments were never removed from that draft. It was always included, and so the controversy that happened around that issue was confusion that we could have avoided. Secondly, when you look at the policies and the protocols that are being proposed, it should help citizens understand what the protocol and expectations are for the commission as a whole. And in fact, I think you'll find that it adds much more transparency to what those expectations are. And then the last thing I'll comment on is that also from those discussions, there's additional work coming that's not completed. One is a new commissioner orientation packet that's going to be online and available both to any new commissioner coming on board, but also any candidate running for commission. And we'll have a lot of information on what the job entails and what to expect, as well as from this commission work that's going to be done for all the boards and commissions, again, for more transparency and more consistency. So I just wanted to share that with the public as there's more to come.
Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Kolpak,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 39, update on the Riverfront renewal plan and tax increment finance district. Jim Gilmore to explain. Basically, I thought it was time that Jim kind of explained this a little bit because we always talk about this a little bit, but I think commissioners deserve to kind of know what's going on with it.
Thank you. The Fargo City Commission approved this Riverfront Development Plan in 2021. Overall, the activities are designed to remove blighted conditions along the riverfront, basically from the railroad tracks on the north side of the downtown to Prairie St. John's on the south side, everything east of 4th Street. Two activities have begun and actually are almost implemented. One is the demolition of Mid-America Steel. The City Commission authorized the demolition of those buildings to kind of clean up the site, especially right after the fire. Secondly, the River House Apartments north of here were provided TIF assistance and Renaissance Zone assistance in that building. I believe will be completed in the fall. Previously, it was a vacant commercial office building and a vacant warehouse. What I have here is these are all the activities that are in the Riverfront TIF plan. You can see the list of activities. They kind of fall into, I guess, three different categories. One, there's promoting new affordable housing along the river, especially on vacant sites. Secondly, there's improvements to the public realms if we want to do something with the Civic Plaza, and also then supporting redevelopment, whether that be in Mid-America Steel, and just figure out what we want to do with the former health building and the former police department building in the long run. There are two activities I think it's important we start to take a real close look at as soon as possible. One is that the Fargo Housing Authority is planning a new building for the Lashquitz site. That's a big budget for them to undertake, and this would provide $536,000 to really improve the exterior design rather than go with more of a suburban pitch roof and not have as many amenities within the building. They really need to decide soon, probably by your next meeting, whether or not they would get this assistance to go with design that would fit more with the other buildings that are going up in the area, or again, whether it's more of this suburban type design that really won't be as attractive. Secondly, the downtown redevelopment plan recommended that we spend some money in the short term on the Civic Plaza, suggested $100,000 a year each year for the next 5 years. Another one that I have highlighted here is affordable housing at the Prairie St. John's site. Prairie St. John's may be interested in selling some property for that, but we're not getting a really clear answer right now, but that's just one to keep in mind. So here's the status of the fund. Again, most of the activities that were received or most of the funds received in 2023 and 24 were utilized for the demolition of Mid-America Steel. The balance is $84,000. The projected income for next year based on current mill levy and current property values would be 572,000, making available 656,000 for activities next year. If you do the Fargo housing and set aside some money for the plaza, that still leaves a small balance. When you look ahead at future years, as more tax exemptions expire, there is a lot of growth in TIF revenue. TIF revenue would be over 34 million. I noted in my report that there'd probably be another 4.8 million in the 5 years following 2025, and another 8.2 million in the years following that. So I'd like to kind of bring to you at your next meeting that housing authority concept. We're working on the language on that to see if you're interested in funding that. But probably more importantly, whether it's at a special meeting, a brown bag, a quarterly finance meeting, or part of next year's budget request, really the questions are, since the 3 years that you adopted this plan, which of these should we still include in the plan? Are there ones that should be excluded? For instance, the bike bridge on 2nd Street was canceled, at least in the short term. Are there new things that we should add that would improve blight, make the riverfront better? And then what's the priority, and which of these are the most important? Which of these do you want to do right away? I think there's going to be opportunity to do a lot of things with this fund along the river. So I think at a future meeting, we probably want to roll up our sleeves and get into the detail and get input from the downtown redevelopment plan that was approved, and downtown residents and downtown businesses on which of these things are the most important. So just want to give you that update and see if you have any questions.
I just think Lackwich is a pretty important project and pretty important that goes forward. I know Chris is here too. So we probably would need an update of what that is actually going to involve, so the commission to decide whether or not they want to fund that. So unless you're going to present it next meeting, Jim, I think
I'll bring it next meeting because Chris really needs an answer next week on which way he goes with the design.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, I would really, in fact, I was coming into this conversation asking for a brown bag on the entire TIF district plan. It would be helpful, and if you could do this, to have a sort of a pro forma with the revenue coming in year by year, and then the expenses, projected expenses possibly for the projects, so that we can get a sense of when those projects are getting plugged in. And if indeed, that would be the priority or not, it would be helpful to be able to see it on a timeline of sorts. But I would certainly encourage a brown bag where we can have a little more discussion about the whole thing.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good idea on the revenue, and a few of these projects, but some of the others, that's going to be really, what are your priorities do you want to do next, and what priorities should we put off for maybe 5 years? For instance, we don't know what's going to happen with the Civic Center. It's hard to spend a lot of money on the plaza not knowing what the long-term future of that building is.
Yeah.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim and Nicole as well. I would like to acknowledge both of you have, to my knowledge, been working with the Fargo Housing Authority pretty closely and have helped shape this project to be a better project going forward with the public partnership that's evolving. So this is a really good example of collaboration. We all agree about affordable housing and the need for housing, and then when you have affordable housing, when we can step it up. So this is a good example. Thank you, Nicole. I see you back there. You really stepped up and helped us shape this proactively before the horses were too far out of the barn. And Jim, you've delivered it, as I see it, with regards to the working relationship with the Housing Authority. And of course, now it lands on us, but this is a really good incremental improvement to a project going forward that will last for a long, long time.
Any other comments? Commissioner Preston.
If I could ask one more question, and maybe this would be best answered in a brown bag, but as we look at the Mid-America site, I know Nicole and I have talked about having a consultant help us figure out what we would want with that site, and then also looking at the mitigation with the brownfield issues there. Would the cost of doing that come from, it looks like there's $1 million left over perhaps from that original
Yeah, and
thought?
these are just wide-ranging estimates. I haven't done any real detailed sort of, spitballing them.
And that's why that
Yeah.
timeline would be really nice to see, is when would that fit in with the revenue coming in?
I think it's important to do some planning first because, I look at this site and I see, well, we have a city ordinance that says you really can't build anything there because of flood setbacks. So we need to make some modification to that. We don't have flood protection. Where should that go? In order to get the flood protection in, we might need to move the road. The utilities and NP are substandard and really not suitable to fit anything. And then you got the environmental cleanup. So you're right, a lot of work needs to be done before we start spending a lot of money in that site. And the sooner the better we start.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about in regards to planning for the site.
Yes.
And we might look just like a LACOIST of our EPA grant. We got that EPA grant out of Denver. Maybe that can help us clean it up without us dipping in the TIF account, allowing us to have more money in the TIF account to go other places, Jim. So it is at some point we'll have to sit down and say, what are we going to do with Mid-America site? Because there's a lot of different people that have been weighed in on that. At some point with Mike Redinger, we should start to look at what are we going to do with Mid-America? And maybe it's a discussion for a brown bag as well of what we're going to do with that site. Any other questions or comments? Item 40, Jim, you want to talk to us about amendments to the tax increment financing policy?
Yeah, when I brought you renewal plan ideas in the past, generally there's a developer that knows exactly what they're going to build. I think of the Bruhala. They knew what they were going to build. They knew what the costs were going to be. We could do a financial review, and it was ready to go. What we're kind of seeing in several sites, they started talking to two developers, and ironically, after the story was in the paper, I had 3 other calls about people sort of in a similar situation where they have buildings that are probably economically and functionally obsolete. They're not sure what they're going to do with the property in the long term, but it's probably best for them and the community if the sites were removed. And so what this policy proposes, and the one we're looking at more closely, is the SARS block. You have, again, the entire block is vacant. The developer's looking at some different ideas, but really isn't ready to go yet. And so what this new policy would provide is we would actually write the renewal plan right away. They would enter into a development agreement that within 5 years, they would redevelop the site. They would be reimbursed for certain costs only from the new development. The city isn't putting any money up front. So it kind of puts them on the clock to get something redeveloped. The limitations on the cost would be probably a little more strict than what we have, since it would be this initial 5-year. It would be strictly the cost of demolition, and the cost of the value of the building is determined by the city assessor. But even if they paid more for it, they would only be reimbursed for the value of the building as determined by the city assessor. We'd have to establish some fees, and also the TIF assistance would be limited to a 5-year window. If they had some sort of exemption, that 5-year period would start after the exemption was over. And I think there's some interest in this. Right now, we're kind of in an uncertain time with interest rates, with construction costs, with demand for housing, and so we have developers are sort of they've hit the pause button on developments that might otherwise go ahead. Things you would evaluate would be the conditions of the existing buildings, the short-term benefit of removing the properties, the potential for redevelopment, the existence of factors why they can't go ahead right away, as well as the time needed for redevelopment. The request would first go to the Economic Development Incentives Committee. They would make the recommendation to create the renewal plan, and the renewal plan would come to you, and like all the others, there'd be a public hearing and opportunity for the public to comment, as well as notices out to potential competitors. So anyway, that's a proposal that that the committee worked on and worked with Ian to kind of clean up some of the language on the policy. I know Steve Dirksen with the fire department might want to make a couple comments here too in terms of them not having to respond to fires. We don't want another Mid-America Steel type building burning up just because it's vacant. So Steve.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I came to the Economic Development Incentive Committee in support of this change of policy. These buildings, they're not good to have in our community. If we can incentivize taking them down, we respond to them on a regular basis, and I'm sure the PD is there as well for different things, not always fires, but things that happen in those buildings. And if we can take those out, as I've studied fire in other communities throughout our country over the years, these are places where we hurt and injure our employees. And if we can take care of these things and put them in the ground and cover it up and wait for a place to, a developer that wants to come back in and redevelop this, rehab this neighborhood, that would be my suggestion as one of your public safety officials, that we can keep our employees safe, we can keep our community safe. We can do a lot of things that'll make our community a better place. I would just stand in support of this new policy change.
Thanks, Chief. Any other comments or comments? You're going to have a motion.
I'm sorry, I was just going to,
Commissioner
one
Colbeck.
comment. Thank you. I just really appreciated the innovation of this policy and the work that the committee did. And to me, it just seems like a real solutioning here in a practical way. So thank you.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, and then I have a comment.
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, I really, as an individual that lives right behind some of these, the biggest advantage in my mind is removing the blight for the neighborhood. So, good. I'm glad with it.
Commissioner Pipcorn, you want to comment on it? Your committee took it.
No, it's great. I do agree with the chief, and it's just the public safety and also the perception. A lot of the windows are boarded up, and so it's just, it'll be an improvement. And the other good thing is it does give them 5 years to actually start doing something. So I think that's another good part of it. So I think it's great.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. Commissioner Pepcorn, I'd like to thank the members of your committee who came up with this approach and presented it to us and worked forward. I know you have lots of topics that you're always looking at, but this is a really good one, and the public will see the result in it. So thanks to everybody who works on the Economic Incentives Development Committee, whatever that committee is called.
Tax Incentive Committee, you got it right. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 41, recommendation direct police chief and city attorney to research what would be required to enforce a law in regards to vehicles that are illegally altered for creating noise. Commissioner Preston, you want to start it out? Police chief's coming up. Ian's prepared on the side.
Sure. So I have heard repeatedly over the years about the noise coming from certain vehicles and motorcycles, to be honest with you. Cars and motorcycles and pickups, creating a lot of noise. And this spring, I'm starting to get quite a few complaints again coming. And personally, I was walking down Broadway the other night, and there were, I think, 5 or 6 vehicles that had been altered. And I tell you, it was like those fireworks that just boom and they don't have any lights with them. That's what it sounded like. It was bouncing off the buildings, and every single one of those cars did it at every block. It was obnoxious. So my question then was, so what can we do? And it sounds like it's difficult to know exactly what we can do. So that is the reason for the agenda item being here tonight.
Sure, and we've explored this a little bit in the past. There are some cities in different states that have adopted ordinances that would allow towing of those vehicles. And we had discussed that maybe a year or so ago as well, but we don't really have that ability under current city ordinance. And then the other question that would have to be dealt with is normally when you seize something because it's illegal or altered illegally, you would keep it until the illegality was cured. And we would need a mechanism for that. If we told the car, how would they fix it before it released back? But certainly approving the motion gives us and the city attorney an opportunity to put some options on the table for the commission. We may need some change. We may need some change in state law. I'm not positive on that one. But there are some things that we could bring forward for your consideration to assist in dealing with that.
Any other comments? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Police Chief Zabolski, you know, this is just one of many topics that come your way, our way, you know. And Commissioner Preston, you've been consistently, and thank you for listening to the citizens on this, but street racing and speeding and those, to me, I'm not sure if there's a difference or not. We've had other topics where we find out, well, if the police do or don't witness something, they can or cannot cite for it. And then we find out that we have limits relative to federal or state laws, how much we can cite people for and penalize. So in my mind, I think this is a great topic, but I hope we'd expand it to these varying public safety, trafficking, speeding, racing issues, not just noisy modified vehicles. I take it, I'd go further than what you're asking for. And maybe you're already doing that already. I think you probably are, but.
Chief, you want to comment to that?
Sure. Well, I don't disagree with that. I am strongly in favor of getting those cars off the road, but we have to have a legal mechanism to do it. Because again, the enforcement is hit and miss in terms of when you catch these vehicles, either with the altered mufflers or the dangerous driving that they've been involved with. But I think we just need to put together the authority to do that and make sure that, you know, we've got all those bases covered and go from there. But I'll throw it back to Commissioner Preston, but from my perspective, I don't think it would be much different in terms of what we would be looking at. In at least one of the other ordinances that we've looked at previously, they do include the dangerous driving as well as the noise issues.
So we could instruct legal and you to work together and come back to the commission in a month or so? Is that fair?
Legal? What do you think, a month? Okay. Yeah, that sounds fine.
So we don't need a motion. I think it's just instructions to the chief and need legal to do that? Is that fair?
The only thing is that the request has been made that, again, that it doesn't come from an individual. So I would suggest that we actually take the action.
Make a motion, please.
I'll move the recommended motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Recommended motion is direct police chief and city attorney to research what we require to enforce laws regarding vehicles that are illegally altered or created noise, but I think Commissioner Strand had an amendment to that.
Mayor, I would suggest we amend it to include speed racing and other safety issues in our streets.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say
Commissioner
something. I think the difference is here that it's not real clear the legal authority around this particular issue. With speeding, there is a legal process, a legal authority to address that. So, and when I talk to neighborhoods or residents in neighborhoods, it's the noise that's created, even with the speeding, that is keeping them awake.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clarification. I don't know there would be harm for us embellishing this discussion going forward, knowing we all have those concerns and that you've raised them in the past too.
So she would like to keep it as it is, and Commissioner Strand, if you want an additional motion, you're welcome to do that.
I already moved to amend it to include street speeding and street racing topics as well.
And did we get a second?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Do I have a second to Commissioner Strand's amendment?
I'll second it, but then I'll ask the chief here. I don't know that that requires any additional research.
We don't have any legal authority to tow vehicles for dangerous driving. So if that's, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
I would just appreciate a report back so we see the bigger picture and these nuances, and you
Yeah,
can
we
help
could-
us understand that.
We could provide several options, sure.
Okay, that sounds good.
So we do a roll call with the amended motion? Is that fair?
You vote on the amendment first.
Yep.
Okay, vote on the amendment first. Roll call on the amendment first.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
All right.
Colpack,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye. Now I'll vote on the original amendment, or original motion. Do a roll call vote.
Preston,
Aye.
Colpack,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Yes. Item 42, recommendation to award a bid for the improvement district, the BN 23EI, which Tom will explain to us where that is. So,
Good evening. Maybe just to start, as you know, these recommendations to award projects are typically on the consent agenda. This one did have a fairly high rate of protests, and so I just want to explain the project and why we're kind of doing it. So just brief overview, talk about the location, purpose and need, a little bit about our decision-making process for a project like this, talk about the protests of improvements that we received, and then a summary of bids and recommended motion. So this project is on 45th Street North from 19th Avenue North to 32nd Avenue North. It's a 1 mile stretch. Next, just talk a little bit about why we're doing the project. So it's really to support developer requested commercial and limited industrial development adjacent to. And so you can see this area if you're looking to the right or east of the blue line here. In 2018, there really wasn't much out there. We were still building 19th Avenue North, west of 45th Street. Mid-America was just starting to build over there, north of the horse park. Advanced 2 years later, and Laverne's first edition had come online. You can see some of the infrastructure was there for Laverne's first edition. E.W. Wiley had built on their site there, and we advanced a few more years, and Laverne's first edition is essentially filled in by 2023. Developer had requested infrastructure for Laverne's second edition. At this point, all that infrastructure is in, and a number of building permits have been pulled, and development is starting up there. So when we look at this area, looking at all the growth that's been happening, we started looking at, well, should we be paving 45th Street? So that's kind of the initial question. We landed on yes, obviously, and some of the reasoning behind there is it's currently gravel. We spend about $50,000 annually in maintenance. Again, as I've talked about, the recent development we know will increase traffic volumes on this road and therefore will increase maintenance costs if it were to remain gravel. And then another advantage is paving would support existing development to the east, but also additional development to the west. So the next thing we kind of took a look at with this project is what are the project limits? We discussed just going from 19th Avenue to 28th Avenue. One thing I'll mention is that there's a drain just east of 45th Street, and there's a crossing at 28th Avenue. We also looked at going from 19th Avenue all the way to 32nd. There is not currently a drain crossing at 32nd Avenue, but there will be at some point in the future. So what we decided is to go from 19th Avenue all the way to 32nd Avenue. And again, some of the reasoning behind that decision, we'd otherwise leave a half a mile of gravel roadway that we would be left maintaining from 28th to 32nd Avenue. But paving this roadway would also support the developable land, which is in our ET north of 28th Avenue and west of 45th Street. And kind of the last point just to talk about is we approached Riley's Acres. So the northernmost quarter mile west of 45th Street is in Riley's Acres city limits. And so we had approached them, same type of methodology for cost sharing as we've done with West Fargo many times in the past. Approached them and they were willing to cost participate for their portion, which is about $624,000 of the project cost. So the next question was, well, what kind of pavement type? So concrete or asphalt? And we chose to go with concrete for this entire roadway. And some of the reasoning there is we do know that it's a higher initial cost, but we do calculate the life cycle costs and found it to be lower in this situation. We know there's going to be a very high ratio of truck traffic on this road. And part of the issue, asphalt is a fantastic material, but it's a flexible pavement. It really relies on the strength of the base underneath. And so the issue is in spring, there are certain times where we have to restrict fully loaded trucks on that. And of course, in this area with all the commercial and industrial, light industrial development, it would certainly have a potential impact on commerce. So North Dakota Century Code 402218 describes how protests should be calculated, and basically just says owners of the majority of the area, if they protest, that shall bar the improvements proceeding utilizing special assessments. So we did receive a total of 9 protests, which equate to 41.5% of the improvement district. So if had it been 50% or more, state law would have required that we reject bids and not move forward. We did meet, though, with a couple of property owners on April 9th that had protested the improvements. Those 2 property owners together represent 33.6% of the improvement district. So without their protest, the protest rate for the project would have been 7.9%. We had a really great meeting with them, talked about the reasoning for the improvements, why we made the decisions we did. Specifically, really the concrete pavement and the pavement itself between 28th Avenue and 32nd Avenue North. And at the end of that meeting, I encouraged those property owners to reach out to commissioners if they did not support the project. I'm not sure if you've been contacted by them or not, but if you have not been, I think that really means that they've kind of changed their opinion and no longer oppose the project. So here's a summary of bids. Low bid was Dakota Underground at about 3.6 million. Our engineer's estimate was about 3.9 million, so it came in about 7% under estimate. And I've provided a recommended motion on the screen and happy to take any questions.
Tom, you also said the cost of this was not 100%. It's a different cost on this particular project.
So it is 100% special assessed. It is an arterial roadway though, and so we use cap costs for new development. But we did not reach the cap. We're only 30% of the cap cost for this project. So 30% of what it could be if it was a larger roadway, but only 30% of the cap was used.
Okay. Appreciate Pipcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, first of all, thanks, Tom. That meeting, that was, obviously none of them are here tonight, and I didn't hear from any of them after that meeting. So by having that and talking about it, so Tom has got me brainwashed, because what I said was, it never gets cheaper to build infrastructure, and the bids came in, prices are a little bit down, and so that was, I'm learning as time goes by from Tom, but I do think, and the other thing is, it's a commercial area, so you have to have the capacity to handle heavy trucks. And then the last thing, I'll make the motion if that's okay, no, I guess I'll wait, that's not time for that. But can you talk a little bit, so in front of Riley's Acres, the speed or the weight is reduced. Can you talk a little bit about that, just so, I think a lot of people aren't aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, so at the city limit lines of 32nd Avenue to the north, Riley's Acres fully controls that roadway. They own both sides. Their city limits are both sides of the roadway. And so they really control that road. And so they do have year-round road restrictions on that road that limit the weight of vehicles. That was one of the items that came up with the property owners there. They would like to see that modified. We've asked that question to the city of Riley's Acres, and I don't believe they have any intention of changing those load limits. And I think part of the reason for that is they do have residential property, a number of residential properties that directly front that roadway.
Mr. Preston.
So I probably missed it, but Laverne's second edition that you had up here on the screen, is that fully developed now? It looks like it's platted out, but and what is that zoned? Is that commercial, industrial, residential?
So Laverne's second edition is commercial and limited industrial.
Okay.
It is platted. All the infrastructure is in. We've seen at least one, if not more, building permits pulled. There have been some replats that this commission has acted upon, like this, if you can see my pointer. This was replatted into one larger lot. This entire block up here is, there's a plat in process. That's where border states sought an incentive to develop that land.
If I could do one more follow-up. So I'm assuming there will be deferrals on both sides of 45th, or?
I do know the property owner on the west is likely to seek a deferral for the special assessments associated with this. I think there's potential that some of the properties within Laverne's second edition could also make that request.
Commissioner Pipcorn, you want to make a motion?
I would love to make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second? Mr. Kolpak? Any other discussion? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. Commissioner Preston came close to this asking about deferrals, but I'd like to have a better understanding of what's happening on the west side of that whole project and who's going to pay for it and what the future is. How, I'm not sure I'm not clear on where the burden of paying will land on that.
So I'm going to skip to this slide.
And I don't even know whose land it is. If you can help me know who is it, extraterritorial of Fargo? Is it Riley's Acres?
Sure. And I should have included the assessment district. Essentially, it runs straight north here, a half a mile west of 45th Street, and then 1 mile to the east, all the way over to the interstate. Everything in yellow that you see is current City of Fargo city limits. There is a 1/4 mile west of 45th Street that is currently City of Fargo ET. And then there's a 1/4 mile on the very north end that is current Riley's Acres city limits. And so the way it would work is if no deferral was given, this land would be special assessed. I would say the city in the past has supported deferrals for unplatted land that is not ready to develop. The area outside of our city limits, we quantify the benefit. And once they come into the city limits, then those special assessments get attached to that property.
And Mayor, just to clarify on the 41.5% of protests, they've not lifted those protests officially, or have they?
They have not.
So they're technically on the books still.
Correct.
You know, I don't know that we can assume they've walked away from them. So in my mind, they still are there.
You're correct. We still, the way we quantify it, we have 41.5% protest for this improvement district.
That's probably why it's here.
That's
on
correct.
the regular agenda, so the commission can weigh in and decide what it wants to do. Commissioner Strand. Any other discussion?
One more question.
Commissioner Preston?
Tom, since that one portion, I don't know, it's gray or purple or something, since that's in Riley's Acres, so the cost of 45th going all the way up to 32nd, is that then spread out amongst the rest of the assessment district, or?
Nope. So that's where Riley's Acres. So basically, what we would have typically specialists had that location been within City of Fargo limits. That's what we quantified as being Riley's Acres cost. And Riley's Acres, I believe, is spreading a portion of that cost to that parcel and a portion of that cost to the remainder of the.
So they're actually doing specials on their side?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
And they concurred with this project award last week at their meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
You're agreeable. That was not great. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Applications for property tax exemptions to prove it made to buildings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just like the public to know that Bell Bank has spent a considerable amount to rehab their building downtown, and well is over $100 million. So just so you know on our tax exemptions what's happening. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston.
Aye.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. I'm going to split these two. One of my commissioners approached me on this particular issue, so I have recommendations for appointments to board. I'll start with the Municipal Airport Authority. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand.
Yes.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Preston.
Aye.
Kolpak.
No.
Mahoney.
Aye. I have my appointments for the Fargo Dome Authority. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Guys, a little slow in seconds. It's 6:40, guys. Let's keep going here. Roll call vote, please.
Kolpak.
Aye.
Pipcorn.
Aye.
Preston. Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We are going to do liaison commissioner updates, and Commissioner Pipcorn, you offered to start because you have, I think, so many audience that you want to speak to, or?
I
speak
do.
about?
So I want to thank everybody that stayed through the whole meeting that's from that neighborhood. So thank you for being good sports. So last Friday night, I was invited to a neighborhood meeting at 7 p.m. We have a house, 85 28th Avenue Northeast. It's very, very similar to our experience with Dan Curtis. And so I just want to relay some of the information. I'm not going to go through all of it. We have an excellent group of neighbors, and it's actually my neighborhood. And so when I walked there, I was surprised. The number of police calls is pages, and so I won't go through reading it all, but I'll just kind of summarize what's going on. The house is right now owned by Mike Holland. It was sold to him, and then Aaron Gretterman is the listed rental agent, and they have been very uncooperative with the neighborhood. And so the list of things going on is just unbelievable. I'll just go through real quick. It's basically multiple convicted felons. Some of them are sex offenders. And so on 4/9, the Fargo Narcotics and Parole Probation conducted a search. The search had found methamphetamine and fentanyl. The other thing that's concerning is this is 2 blocks away from Longfellow Elementary School. And so what I've done is the neighborhood has sent me, they've got lots of information and they are on top of it. We have a former police officer who is right nearby, and so he is on top of it. So Shauna Radnick from Inspections and Chief Zabalski, I've forwarded all the information to them, so they're on top of it. And the mayor, and if any of the other commissioners want to get the information, you just let me know and I'll forward it on to them. But it's ongoing, and it's been multiple years. And so, and obviously inspections, we have to follow what the rules are. And so we will do everything that we can. And I told this to our neighborhood group, the city will do everything. The police department, we will do everything we can. But I'm calling on everybody to put pressure on this. Mike Holland, he's a realtor, and Aaron Gretterman, and contact them and say, this is not what we want in our neighborhood. And so I would appreciate that, whatever you can do to help us. But the other thing is we are gonna be aggressive. As a neighborhood, we're gonna put pressure on them. We have lots of good people. They don't wanna live. We're convicted felons, and what's happening now is when one leaves, another one comes. And so it's a revolving door. And so what's happening is people are coming to the wrong door in the middle of the night. That's scary. If it's a single mom. So anyway, it's a real issue. Once again, I'm apologize for going on and on, but the address is 85 28th Avenue Northeast. The realtor is Mike Holland, and Aaron Gretterman is the listed retail agent. And I'd appreciate to put pressure on them to say, let's sell this house to a family. It's a great neighborhood. Some of the neighbors are not that great. That would probably be me. But I mean, it's right by Longfellow School. That's what we want. We don't want to have it to be a felon house. We can't have that. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair, for going a little bit over my time, and thank you for all especially you brought your son with. Don't let him discourage him from being involved in politics by these meetings lasting so long. But thank you for coming, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
He looks like he needs to take a nap. That went you a little longer. Thank you, Commissioner Pipcorn. Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, Commissioner Strand mentioned the evicted film that was shown by the High Plains Fair Housing Group last week at Fargo Theater. Great turnout. It really is related to a lot of the conversation we've been having about the homelessness issue. And Matthew Desmond was the gentleman that was featured in the film. He did a pretty in-depth sociological research project in Wisconsin. And following the film was a panel discussion, and the main point that I came away with was what is happening with evictions currently. And I'm just looking at some data from the court system. We've had 176 filings for evictions in 1 month in February of 2024. And when we talk about homelessness, stopping the bleed and trying to help people stay in their current housing is a large part of that. However, the biggest takeaway for me was the right to counsel is something that we do not have in this state. Only 1% of the tenants that went to court about evictions are provided counsel. So I think that's something that there's a few people in the community that are interested in pursuing. The other piece that I just want to do a quick report on is we've been talking a lot about walkability with the last CZB visit in regards to the growth plan. And there's a group in town, it's a Strong Towns affiliate, and they are trying to bring in expert of some sort to provide some information both to the city as well as other jurisdictions and then the community. So hopefully that will be happening in the fall.
Very good. Letters were sent out by Sue Thompson, Mike Redinger about the budget. We're going into the budget the next month. You'll see people gathering together. I would encourage any commissioner with liaison responsibilities to visit with their department, see where we're headed this year. The strong emphasis is basically going to be on our salary of our staff, make sure we're competitive in that area. And we would hope that we could march forward with a good budget for you in June, July. So we are beginning to work on that and just strongly encourage you to work with your teams. Other than that, the fire department had a busy weekend again. We seem to be having fires and different things happen. Unfortunately, we had a firefighter get involved driving with a motorcycle, and unfortunately that happened. Just advise the public, very careful when you see a fire truck going out on a run. Try to keep out of their way. Those are big trucks to move and very difficult at times. Our team feels bad about the accident, but yet at the same time they were pursuing, there was a fire actively going on at the time, so that makes it difficult. And Chief, you'd say our streets are getting busy. It's hard sometimes when it's a busy hour in which you're trying to get out there and help the people. But I think I've noticed we've had a few more fires this spring than we normally have. It's pretty dry out there and things happen. So Chief, I want to commend you. You immediately took care of that issue and we were there for the team and immediately informed us of that. And leadership is again shown very well by yourself. So I thank you for that. Commissioner Kolpak.
Yeah, and I'll add that the team was there for the victim of that accident as well right away to assist, so thank you. I have one other slide from the water treatment plant and Fargo's water utility. They recently received a certificate of achievement for compliance with all national drinking water standards for 2023. And it's the Safe Drinking Water Act that sets those through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And they're always first to add that the city of Fargo is well positioned for compliance across the board in drinking water regulations, thanks to consistent investments by this body and by leadership in the utility department. So thank you.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I will reiterate, just because it's such good news, the Sustainability Resiliency Committee, the news keeps improving. And the partnership with the state to access federal grants for climate actions, what we accomplished with our team, with Brenda and with Jeremy and with Bruce and with all of our folks, what we accomplished locally to get our entire LED light conversion program accelerated to just 2 or 3 years, and to have that done so quickly. And then it's like about a $2.6 million grant coming our way. And the best news is then we're going to have like a $400,000 annual savings in energy, because just like in your homes, if you convert to LEDs, you're cutting your costs. So good work to our people and to our staff, and thank you to the state for connecting us to this program at the national level. And I really look forward to all of us seeing this conversion unfold in the next few years. Last thing is go downstairs when you get a chance to SRC, Sustainability Resiliency Committee. The finalist art submissions from the students for our bus wraps are down there. I had
first floor, John.
First floor.
Not downstairs.
This floor. We're not on the third floor now, are we? Paula Ekman from the Airport Authority, they're talking a lot about art. She was walking around looking at the art and the presentation of art. And the student art wraps really intrigued us. So take a moment on this floor and take the student messaging to heart.
If there's no other business, we're adjourned.